While he thought I was decorating our mansion, I was analyzing his company's weaknesses, and when he walked out, I bought his life's work from right under his feet. Now, he works for me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The taste of expensive champagne turned bitter in my mouth as I watched them from across the ballroom. My husband of 8 years, Marcus Sterling, couldn't have been more obvious if he tried. His hand rested just a little too low on his secretary's back, their laughter a little too intimate for a corporate holiday party. Victoria Chen, with her perfectly pressed pencil skirt and architectural cheekbones, hung on his every word like he was delivering corporate gospel. I took another sip, letting the bubbles dance on my tongue as I observed them with the same analytical precision I'd used to build my first tech company at 25. The other executives' wives around me chattered about upcoming charity galas and winter vacations in the Maldives, but my attention remained fixed on the subtle power play unfolding before me. Marcus thought I didn't notice. He assumed that 15 years of marriage had dulled my instincts, that playing the role of his sophisticated arm candy had somehow diminished the ruthless business acumen that had once made me the youngest CEO in Silicon Valley. The same skills that had caught his attention at that technology conference in Singapore, before he convinced me to step back and enjoy life as his wife. The crystal flute in my hand caught the light, sending prismatic patterns across my midnight blue Valentino gown. I'd chosen it carefully for tonight's event, the annual Sterling Enterprises Christmas Gala. The same event where, exactly 1 year ago, Marcus had first hired Victoria as his personal secretary. Now I watched as his fingers traced small circles on the silk of her dress, hidden from most observers by the towering ice sculpture of the company logo. Charlotte, darling. Evelyn Matthews's voice cut through my thoughts. She was the wife of Marcus's CFO, her face stretched tight from too many procedures. You must tell Victoria where you got that amazing dress from the board meeting last month. She was just asking me about it. I turned slowly, letting my lips curve into the perfect society smile I'd perfected over the years. Was she now? The irony wasn't lost on me. Victoria had been carefully studying every aspect of my life, from my wardrobe to my mannerisms. Like an understudy preparing to step into the leading role. My phone buzzed quietly in my clutch. A notification from one of the many shell companies I'd established over the past year, operating in complete silence while Marcus assumed I was preoccupied with redecorating our Hamptons estate. The message was simple. Position acquired, awaiting confirmation. I took one last look at Marcus and Victoria, now huddled close by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan's glittering skyline. He whispered something in her ear, and she covered her mouth to stifle a laugh. The same laugh I'd heard through my home office wall during late-night emergency meetings. The band struck up a new song, something slow and jazzy that filled the opulent ballroom. Couples moved to the dance floor, their jewelry catching the light from the crystal. Chandeliers. Marcus's hand moved to Victoria's waist, guiding her toward the dance floor. He didn't even glance in my direction. I placed my champagne flute on a passing waiter's tray and opened my clutch, withdrawing my phone. With practiced poise, I typed out a single word reply. Proceed. The pieces I'd carefully arranged over the past 12 months were finally falling into place. While Marcus had been busy grooming his young secretary as my replacement, I'd been quietly orchestrating the most important business deal of my life. He'd forgotten who I was before I became Mrs. Sterling, the tech prodigy who'd sold her first company for 9 figures at 27. The strategic genius who'd built and flipped 2 more companies before retiring into domestic bliss. I moved through the crowd with deliberate grace, accepting air kisses and exchanging pleasantries. My Louboutins clicked against the marble floor as I made my way to the ladies' room, each step measured and purposeful. In the pristine solitude of the powder room, I checked my reflection. Not a hair out of place, not a crack in my composure. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Documents ready for final signature. Transfer complete by morning. I smiled at my reflection, a real smile this time, sharp and wolfish, nothing like the social mask I'd worn all evening. In less than 12 hours, I would own controlling interest in Sterling Enterprises, the company Marcus had inherited from his father and spent his entire life building. By the time he realized what had happened, it would be too late. Let him have his secretary. I was about to take everything else. I reapplied my signature red lipstick, the same shade I'd worn when I closed my first $1 million deal at 23. Tomorrow, Marcus would learn that he hadn't married a trophy wife. He'd married a corporate shark. And sharks, as he was about to discover, never really stop hunting. The bathroom door opened, and Victoria stepped in, her cheeks flushed from dancing. Our eyes met in the mirror, and I gave her my warmest smile. "Beautiful party, isn't it?" I said, dropping my lipstick back into my clutch. "Enjoy it while it lasts." She blinked, confusion crossing her features, but I was already walking past her, the subtle scent of my Clive Christian perfume lingering in the air. The night was still young, and I had a front-row seat to watch my husband's world crumble. After all, the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with a multi-million-dollar corporate takeover and a glass of vintage champagne. The following morning, I woke before dawn in our Central Park penthouse, my mind crystal clear despite the late night. Marcus hadn't come home, a fact that might have once torn me apart, but now only strengthened my resolve. The city lights twinkled through floor-to-ceiling windows as I made my way to my private study, the one room Marcus never entered because he assumed it held nothing but interior design magazines and charity gala invitations. Behind a false panel in my desk drawer, my secure laptop hummed to life. The screen illuminated with dozens of emails from my team of lawyers and financial advisors, people who answered to me, not to Sterling Enterprises, people whose very existence Marcus had no knowledge of. Each message confirmed what I'd orchestrated over the past year. A complex web of stock acquisitions, proxy votes, and leveraged buyouts, all culminating in today's final move. I pulled up the real-time trading dashboard I'd had custom-built. Numbers scrolled across the screen, each one representing another piece of Marcus's empire sliding into my control. The market wouldn't open for several hours, but everything was in position. My fingers traced across the cool glass of my desk, remembering the day Marcus had suggested I take a step back from my own company. "You don't need to work anymore, darling," he'd said, his tone dripping with condescension. "Let me take care of everything." What he'd really meant was, let me control everything. He'd never understood that for me. Business wasn't about money. It was about the thrill of the game, the strategic dance of power and influence. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "Staying at the office. Big merger talks. Don't wait up." I almost laughed at the irony. He had no idea that the mysterious investment group he'd been negotiating with was actually a labyrinth of shell companies, all leading back to me. I opened my safe and retrieved a thick folder, the original business plan I'd written for my first company, the one I'd sold to fund this very moment. Its pages were worn from years of reference, a reminder of who I was before I became Mrs. Sterling. Each section detailed strategies I'd developed, markets I'd conquered, competitors I'd outmaneuvered. I'd been 25 when I wrote it, already a force in the tech world while Marcus was still riding his father's coattails. The sky began to lighten over Manhattan as I reviewed the final pieces of my plan. In my inbox, confirmation after confirmation arrived from keyboard members. All the ones Marcus had underestimated because they were women. All the ones who'd watched him parade Victoria around the office while I orchestrated their loyalty behind the scenes. I stretched, feeling the expensive silk of my nightgown against my skin. Marcus had bought it for me last Christmas, probably to assuage his guilt. He'd always tried to buy my contentment, never realizing that I'd made more money by 30 than he'd inherit in his lifetime. Every diamond, every designer bag, every luxury car, he'd thought they were chains binding me to him. Instead, they'd been smoke screens, distracting him from the predator in his bed. The intercom buzzed. My private driver was waiting. I dressed carefully, choosing a Tom Ford suit in deep navy, the color of stormy seas. The fabric was armor, the cut precise as a surgeon's scalpel. My Cartier watch, a gift from my first board of directors, not from Marcus, showed 7:30 a.m. In 90 minutes, the New York Stock Exchange would open, and everything would change. As I applied my makeup, I studied my reflection. The woman staring back wasn't the society wife Marcus thought he'd married. She was the CEO who'd made Forbes 30 under 30, the strategist who'd orchestrated hostile takeovers while barely old enough to rent a car. I'd let that woman hibernate, but never disappear. Now she was awake and hungry. My phone lit up again. Another message from Marcus. Meeting with the board at 9. Might have big news. Oh, he'd have news all right, just not the kind he was expecting. I tucked the phone into my Hermes bag, another ironic gift from him, and headed for the elevator. The morning air was crisp with early spring promise as I stepped into my waiting car. Sterling Enterprises, I told my driver, then raised the privacy screen. One last email needed my attention, the final authorization for the takeover. My finger hovered over the send button as memories flashed through my mind. Marcus dismissing my business advice at dinner parties, sharing patronizing looks with his male colleagues, gradually pushing me into the background of my own life. I pressed send. The digital timestamp read 8:15 a.m. By 9:30, Marcus would learn that his father's company, his entire legacy, belonged to me. Victoria could keep him. I'd take everything else. After all, I hadn't spent the last year playing the docile wife. I'd been playing chess, and Marcus had never even realized he was on the board. The Sterling Enterprises building loomed ahead, its glass facade reflecting the morning sun like a wall of diamonds. As my car pulled into the private executive garage, I noticed Marcus's Aston Martin already parked in his reserved spot. Next to it sat Victoria's more modest BMW. They hadn't even tried to be subtle about arriving together. My heels echoed against the polished concrete as I made my way to the private elevator. The security guard nodded respectfully. He'd always been one of the few who remembered I'd once been more than just Mrs. Sterling. Inside the elevator, I pressed the button for the top floor, watching the numbers climb. Each floor represented another layer of the company Marcus thought he controlled, another level of power he assumed was his birthright. My phone vibrated, a message from my lead counsel. All documentation filed, waiting for your signal. I smiled, remembering the day I'd hired Sarah Mitchell. She'd been passed over for partner at her law firm despite orchestrating some of their biggest wins. Marcus had actually recommended against hiring her when I was building my first company, claiming she was too aggressive. That same aggression had now helped engineer his downfall. The elevator doors opened directly into the executive suite. Marcus's assistant, not Victoria, but the older woman who actually kept the office running, looked up in surprise. "Mrs. Sterling, we weren't expecting you this morning. Mr. Sterling is in an early board meeting." "Thank you, Patricia," I cut her off smoothly. "I know." The confusion on her face would soon make sense. I walked past her desk, toward the boardroom where muffled voices carried through heavy wooden doors. My hand rested on the handle as I took a deep breath, savoring this last moment before everything changed. I pushed open the doors. The conversation inside died immediately. 14 faces turned toward me, 13 board members and Marcus, who stood at the head of the table, in his bespoke suit, looking like the corporate prince he thought he was. Victoria sat in a corner, pretending to take notes while shooting me a startled glance. "Charlotte." Marcus recovered quickly, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Darling, we're in the middle of something important." "Yes," I agreed, walking to the opposite end of the table. "We are." I set my bag down and met the gaze of each board member. Most of them looked confused, but a few, the ones I'd been working with, showed the faintest hints of smiles. "Perhaps Mrs. Sterling would like to join us," Elizabeth Chen, the board's senior member, suggested. Marcus laughed, that condescending chuckle I'd grown to despise. "This is a rather technical discussion, dear," he said. "Why don't you—" "It's actually my discussion," I interrupted, my voice cutting through the room like a blade. I withdrew a folder from my bag, sliding it across the polished mahogany. "As of 9 o'clock this morning, I own 51% of Sterling Enterprises." The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger. "That's impossible," he finally managed. "Is it?" I raised an eyebrow, enjoying the way his certainty cracked. "Check your phone." Around the table, phones began buzzing as the news hit the financial wires. Marcus fumbled for his device, his face draining of color as he read. Victoria stood up, her chair scraping against the floor, but I ignored her. "Over the past year," I continued, my voice steady, "while you assumed I was occupied with charity luncheons and interior decorating, I was orchestrating the largest acquisition in this company's history. Every time you stayed late at the office, with your secretary, I was meeting with investors. Every weekend you spent at your private villa, I was negotiating with board members." I turned to the board. "You'll find comprehensive plans for restructuring and growth in front of you. Sterling Enterprises has stagnated under its current leadership, relying too heavily on inherited contracts and failing to innovate. That changes today." Marcus slammed his hand on the table. You can't do this. The board won't. The board already has, Elizabeth interrupted. We voted this morning before you arrived. Mrs. Sterling, or should I say Ms. Reynolds, presented a compelling vision for the company's future last week. One that doesn't involve nepotism or office affairs. I watched as the reality of his situation finally dawned on Marcus. He looked around the table, searching for allies, but found none. The same people he'd dismissed, overlooked, or underestimated now held his fate in their hands. This is your father's company, he tried, his voice almost pleading. No, I corrected him. This was your father's company. Then it was yours. Now it's mine. I sat down at the head of the table, in the chair he'd just vacated. And Marcus? You're fired. Victoria made a small sound from her corner. I turned to her, enjoying the fear in her eyes. You too, Ms. Chen. HR will escort you both out. Though, I suspect you'll want to pack quickly. The press will be here soon. As security led them away, I faced the board, ready to begin my first meeting as CEO. The woman Marcus had tried to diminish had not only survived, she had conquered. And this was just the beginning. The media storm hit before Marcus and Victoria reached the lobby. My PR team, assembled months ago, had already released the press statement. By the time I finished my first board meeting as CEO, Chalker's Sterling takeover was trending on Twitter, with financial analysts scrambling to piece together how I'd orchestrated such a complete corporate coup. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of what was now my office, watching the city sprawl beneath me. Marcus's personal items still cluttered the desk, family photos, golf trophies, the pretentious fountain pen collection he'd bragged about, at dinner parties. A team would pack them up later. For now, they served as remnants of a dynasty that had crumbled in a single morning. Sarah Mitchell, my lead counsel, entered without knocking, a privilege she'd earned over the past year of meticulous planning. The shareholders are responding better than expected, she reported, tablet in hand. Stocks up 12%. Apparently the market likes the idea of competent leadership. I smiled, remembering how Marcus had dismissed Sarah when I'd first hired her. How's our other situation? Marcus is at his lawyer's office. Sarah's lips curved. They're reviewing the prenup, the one you had me revise last year when he was too busy with his late meetings to read the fine print. The prenup had been my masterstroke, convincing Marcus to sign an updated version that included a clause about corporate asset division. He'd been so confident in his control, so certain I was just engaging in trivial legal housekeeping, that he'd signed without scrutiny. Now that same document prevented him from challenging my ownership of the company. My phone buzzed. Evelyn Matthews, the CFO's wife who'd spoken to me at the party. Charlotte, darling, I just heard the news. How? Unexpected? Her voice dripped with artificial concern. We simply must do lunch. I'm sure this is all so overwhelming for you. Actually, Evelyn, I kept my voice pleasant, I'm reviewing your husband's department finances right now. Perhaps we should postpone until after the audit. The line went dead. I turned to Sarah. Schedule a forensic accounting team for the CFO's division. Something tells me Marcus wasn't the only one getting careless. The afternoon unfolded in a blur of meetings, calls, and strategic decisions. I dismantled Marcus's inner circle systematically, replacing sycophants with professionals I'd vetted over the past year. Each change sent ripples through the company, transforming Sterling Enterprises from a boys' club into a modern corporation. At 4 o'clock, my private line rang, Marcus's number. I let it go to voicemail, then played it on speaker while Sarah watched with raised eyebrows. Charlotte, this is insane. His voice had lost its usual smoothness. You can't just... This isn't. I built this company. You have no idea how to run it. Be reasonable. We can talk about this. About us. About everything. Just call me back. Sarah snorted. He still thinks this is a marital spat he can smooth over. He always did underestimate me, I said, deleting the message. Have security sweep the penthouse. Change the codes, locks, everything. I doubt he'll try anything stupid, but already done. Sarah handed me another tablet. And you'll want to see this. Victoria's been busy. The screen showed an email chain. Victoria had been copying sensitive company documents to a private server for months. Insurance, I mused. She thought she could use them as leverage if things went south with Marcus. Want me to have her arrested? I considered it, then shook my head. No, let her keep them. They'll only prove what we're about to reveal anyway. Marcus's mismanagement, his inappropriate relationships with subordinates, the questionable contracts with his golf buddies. She's actually doing us a favor. As evening approached, I took a moment to visit my old office, the one I'd maintained as Mrs. Sterling, filled with the trappings of a corporate wife. The decor was perfect, designed to convey exactly what Marcus had wanted the world to see, his tasteful, decorative spouse. Opening a hidden panel in the bookshelf, I retrieved a single leather-bound notebook. Inside were the original notes for this takeover, written the day I'd first suspected Marcus's affair. Not plans for revenge, but for renaissance. I'd seen a nice opportunity not just to punish his betrayal, but to rescue a company that had floundered under outdated leadership. My phone chimed, a message from Elizabeth Chen. Board dinner tomorrow night. The old guard should meet the new CEO properly. I smiled, typing back a quick confirmation. The same board members who had nodded politely at Marcus's directives were now ready to embrace actual leadership. A knock at the door revealed Patricia, Marcus's former assistant. She stood uncertainly, clutching a folder. Ms. Reynolds? Security found these in Victoria's desk. They're the original blueprints for the Singapore expansion. Mr. Sterling had reported them missing last month. I accepted the folder, noting how Marcus had blamed a failed project on lost documents rather than his own poor planning. Patricia, how long have you worked here? 23 years, ma'am. And how many times did Marcus take credit for your work? She blinked, then straightened. Too many to count. Would you be interested in heading our new administrative operations division? We need someone who actually understands how this company runs. The smile that spread across her face was answer enough. As she left to consider the offer, I turned back to the windows. The city lights were coming on, creating a tapestry of ambition and opportunity. Somewhere out there, Marcus was realizing that he'd lost more than a wife. He'd lost an empire. And I was just getting started. The first week as CEO unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony. Each morning brought new revelations of Marcus's mismanagement. Each afternoon, another opportunity to correct years of corporate negligence. The Wall Street Journal ran a feature on the takeover, dubbing it the silent coup. Their headline captured the essence perfectly. Tech pioneer returns, how Charlotte Reynolds reclaimed her crown. I sat in what was now indisputably my office, reviewing the latest audit reports. Marcus's executive team had been sloppy, leaving trails of questionable decisions and worse accounting. The CFO, Richard Matthews, Evelyn's husband, had already resigned, citing personal reasons. His hasty departure saved me the trouble of firing him over the irregular payments I'd discovered funneling to offshore accounts. Your 9 o'clock is here, my new assistant announced through the intercom. Unlike Victoria, James had actual qualifications beyond looking good in pencil skirts. The door opened to reveal Amanda Chen, Victoria's older sister and one of Silicon Valley's top software architects. Charlotte, she smiled, elegant in a way her sister had tried too hard to emulate. Or should I say, Madam CEO? Just Charlotte, I stood, gesturing to the sitting area with its view of Central Park. Thank you for coming all the way from California. How could I resist? Amanda settled into a leather chair. When you called about heading the new tech division, I assumed it was a joke. Sterling Enterprises doing actual innovation? Under Marcus, this place was a dinosaur wearing a designer suit. I poured coffee for both of us, not from Marcus's pretentious espresso machine, which I'd had removed, but from a simple French press. That's exactly why I want you. Sterling has been coasting on government contracts and old relationships. Time to drag it into the modern era. And it has nothing to do with tweaking Victoria's nose? Amanda's eyes sparkled with mischief. Let's call that a pleasant bonus. I handed her a tablet containing my plans for the company's technological overhaul. Your sister aspired to be a trophy wife. You aspired to revolutionize cloud computing. I know which sister I'd rather have on my team. As Amanda reviewed the proposals, my phone lit up with another message from Marcus. Since the takeover, he'd progressed through the stages of grief at record speed: denial, anger, bargaining, and now a pathetic attempt at manipulation. Charlotte, please. The board doesn't understand what you're doing to my father's legacy. Meet me for dinner. We can fix this. I showed the message to Amanda, who snorted. My sister got a similar text. Apparently, he's promised to leave you if she just helps him fix this mess. How charmingly desperate. I deleted the message without responding. I assume she turned him down? Actually, she's left the country, took a job in Singapore. Amanda looked up from the tablet. These proposals are ambitious. You're not just planning to update the company, you're planning to transform it. That's why I need you. I pulled up additional projections on my laptop. Marcus thought Sterling was a real estate and investment firm that occasionally dabbled in technology. I see it as a tech company that's been masquerading as an old money corporation. Time to drop the mask. The rest of the morning passed in technical discussions and strategic planning. Amanda's expertise would be invaluable in modernizing Sterling's infrastructure. More importantly, her reputation would attract the kind of talent Marcus had always dismissed as too progressive for his father's company. After she left, I had James clear my schedule for lunch. There was somewhere important I needed to be. My driver took me to a familiar address in the meatpacking district, the location of my first company's original office. The building had changed, now housing trendy startups instead of the scrappy tech firms of my early days, but the energy remained the same. I found what I was looking for in a coffee shop across the street. Howard Sterling, Marcus's father and the company's founder, sat at his usual corner table, ancient at 92, but still sharp as ever. He looked up as I approached, his weathered face creasing into a smile. "I wondered when you'd come," he said, gesturing to the empty chair. "Sit. Tell me how you did it." I ordered coffee and studied the man who had built Sterling Enterprises from nothing. "You knew? That you were planning something? Of course." He stirred his tea with deliberate precision. "I've watched Marcus run my company into the ground. For years. Watched him waste his inheritance on vanity projects and yes men. When he married you, I hoped?" He shrugged. "But he made you into decoration instead of letting you be the leader you are. You could have stopped him." "Could I?" Howard's eyes twinkled. "The company needed new blood. Marcus needed a lesson, and you, my dear, needed to remember who you were. I'd say things worked out perfectly." I leaned back, reassessing the past year. The board votes, the easy acquisition of private shares, the lack of resistance from old investors. Understanding dawned. You helped pave the way. I merely chose not to hinder progress. Howard sipped his tea. "The company is yours now, fairly won. Do with it what Marcus never could, make it matter again." As I left the coffee shop, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The last piece had fallen into place. Howard's implicit blessing wasn't just personal validation, it was corporate legitimacy. The old guard would fall in line, and the path to transformation was clear. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Marcus's lawyer's trying to schedule a meeting. Says he has leverage." I smiled, typing back. "Tell them we'll meet. Time to show him exactly how wrong he is." The game wasn't over, it was evolving, and I was still several moves ahead. The law offices of Jensen and Blake occupied the entire 47th floor of a sleek Manhattan tower. I'd chosen the location for this meeting deliberately. It was the same firm where Marcus had tried to have me sign away my rights to the company 6 years ago, claiming it was just a routine post-marriage adjustment. Today, I sat on the other side of their mahogany conference table watching him squirm. "This is unnecessary," Marcus insisted, his perfect composure starting to crack. He'd lost weight in the 2 weeks since the takeover, and his usually immaculate suit looked slightly rumpled. "We're still married. This should be handled privately, not through lawyers." Sarah Mitchell sat beside me, calm and elegant in her Chanel suit. "Mr. Sterling, you're here because you claim to have leverage. Either present it, or stop wasting my client's valuable time." I remained silent, observing Marcus's tells, the slight twitch in his left eye, the way his fingers kept adjusting. His tie. He was bluffing. After 15 years of marriage, I could read him like a quarterly report. "I know about the Weber contract," he finally said, trying to sound confident. "The irregular payments, the offshore accounts. If that gets out, the SEC will—" "You mean these accounts?" I slid a folder across the table. "The ones you set up under shell companies to funnel money to your father's old golf buddies? We've already reported them to the SEC. Full disclosure, complete cooperation." The board was quite impressed with our commitment to transparency. Marcus's face went pale. His lawyer, a young partner who'd clearly been promised a big payday, shifted uncomfortably. "You see, darling," I continued, speaking directly to Marcus for the first time. "While you were busy with Victoria, I was doing more than just investigating your affair. I was documenting every questionable decision, every ethical breach, every instance of corporate misconduct. Did you really think I spent all those charity luncheons just shopping and gossiping? Sarah opened her laptop, turning it to face them. We have copies of everything. Emails, contracts, bank transfers, even some rather inappropriate photos from the company retreat in Aspen. Not with Victoria, though. That was apparently before her time. The young lawyer cleared his throat. Mr. Sterling, I suggest we take a brief recess to— No! Marcus snapped, his facade finally cracking. She's bluffing. She couldn't have accessed. Your passwords? I smiled. Marcus, you used combinations of our wedding date for everything. The day you convinced me to give up my career and become Mrs. Sterling. Rather fitting that those same passwords helped me take back what I gave up. I stood, smoothing my Armani dress. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign a complete separation agreement. No claims on the company, no attempts at corporate espionage, no contact with current employees. In return, I won't press charges for the financial irregularities we've uncovered. You can't. I already have. I nodded to Sarah, who produced another document. The board has unanimously approved a full internal investigation. They're quite eager to demonstrate their commitment to corporate governance. Imagine the headlines. Former CEO under investigation for fraud. Your father would be so proud. Marcus slumped in his chair, the fight draining from him. His lawyer began reviewing the separation agreement with the desperate energy of someone searching for a life raft. Oh, and Marcus? I paused at the door. Victoria sends her regards. From Singapore. Apparently, she's quite enjoying her new position, the one my friend Amanda arranged for her. Far from New York, far from scandal, far from you. The elevator ride down was silent. Once in my car, Sarah finally spoke. That was almost too easy. Men like Marcus can't imagine women being smarter than them, I replied, checking my messages. It blinds them to obvious threats, makes them sloppy. A notification caught my eye. The internal audit of the tech division was complete. Speaking of which, how's the recruitment going? 8 executives from top tech firms have accepted interviews. Word's getting out that Sterling Enterprises is transforming into something interesting. Sarah's smile was predatory. Your reputation from your startup days helps. They remember the innovations you pioneered before Marcus convinced you to retire. The car wound through Manhattan traffic as I reviewed the day's market reports. Sterling stock had risen another 3% on news of the internal audit. Investors appreciated decisive leadership and clean books. My phone buzzed, a message from Howard Sterling. Well played. Marcus never understood that power isn't about control, it's about vision. The company's in better hands now. I typed back a simple, thank you, before turning to Sarah. Schedule a press conference for next week. It's time to announce our new direction. Sterling Enterprises isn't just changing leadership. We're changing the game entirely. What about Marcus's allies on the executive floor? Some of them are still loyal to him. They're loyal to their salaries and stock options, I corrected. By the time I'm done restructuring the company, they'll either adapt or become irrelevant. The old boys' club is closed for renovation. As we pulled up to the Sterling building, soon to be renamed Reynolds Global, I caught my reflection in the tinted windows. The woman who had once dimmed her light to make Marcus comfortable was gone. In her place stood someone who had not only reclaimed her power but was ready to exponentially expand it. One more thing, I told Sarah as we entered the lobby. Have legal draw-up papers to dissolve the Sterling Foundation. It's time the company's charitable arm had leadership that actually cares about more than tax write-offs. The elevator doors closed on the empire I was methodically reshaping. Marcus had thought he was grooming a replacement wife while I was away at charity events. Instead, I'd been building a network of allies, gathering intelligence, and preparing for a revolution. Now, watching the floor numbers climb, I smiled at the irony. He'd wanted a trophy wife, but he'd married a corporate warrior, and I was just getting started. The New York Times headline read, Sterling Enterprises Reborn, Tech Giant Emerges. From Corporate Chrysalis. I set the paper aside on my new desk, sleek, modern, nothing like Marcus's overwhelming mahogany monument to masculinity. In the month since the takeover, I'd systematically erased every trace of the old regime, transforming not just the company's leadership, but its very DNA. The stock had surged another 15% after our announcement of the company's new direction. The market loved our aggressive push into emerging technologies, backed by Amanda Chen's reputation and my own track record in the tech sector. The old guard who'd dismissed me as Marcus's decorative wife were now scrambling to align themselves with my vision. "Ms. Reynolds?" James's voice came through the intercom. "The Bloomberg crew is here for your interview." I checked my reflection in the tablet screen. Gone were the soft pastels and pearls Marcus had preferred. Today, I wore a sharply tailored Alexander McQueen suit in deep crimson, a color he'd always said was too aggressive for his wife. My hair, no longer styled in the gentle waves he'd liked, was pulled back in a sleek chignon that meant business. The interview set up in the conference room overlooked the city skyline. The reporter, Rebecca Chang, had a reputation for tough questions and zero tolerance for corporate spin. Perfect. "Ms. Reynolds," she began after the cameras started rolling. "Some critics say your takeover of Sterling Enterprises was personally motivated, revenge against your husband's infidelity rather than sound business strategy." I smiled, letting the silence hold for a moment. Those critics clearly haven't reviewed our Q1 projections, or my history in the tech sector before my marriage. Sterling Enterprises had become stagnant, relying on outdated business models and personal relationships rather than innovation. The company needed disruption. The fact that it came from within is simply poetic justice. "You've made significant changes in just 4 weeks. Complete executive restructuring, aggressive tech acquisition, even renaming the company." "Reynolds Global better reflects our new direction," I replied. "We're no longer just a New York investment firm trading on an old family name. We're positioning ourselves as a global technology leader." "And the personal aspect? Your husband's very public departure?" "Former husband," I corrected smoothly. "The divorce was finalized this morning. As for Marcus's departure, I believe in meritocracy. Leadership should be earned, not inherited. His father understood that. It's why he's publicly supported our new direction." The interview continued, each question designed to probe for weakness, each answer demonstrating strength. When the cameras stopped rolling, Rebecca lingered. "Off the record," she said. "That was impressive. Most CEOs hide behind PR teams for their first major interview. I'm not most CEOs." I gathered my materials. "I spent years being underestimated, Rebecca. Never again." Back in my office, Sarah waited with updates. "The tech division merger is proceeding ahead of schedule. Amanda's team has already identified key personnel to retain. And," she smirked, "Marcus's attempt to start a competing investment firm isn't going well. Seems his old contacts are hesitant to back him without the Sterling name." "How tragic," I replied, not bothering to hide my satisfaction. "Any word from Victoria?" "Still in Singapore, thoroughly enjoying her new role at our partner firm. Apparently, she's actually quite competent when not distracted by married executives." I moved to the windows, watching the city pulse below. The view reminded me of another moment, 15 years ago, when I'd stood in my first company's office after a successful IPO. I'd felt invincible then, until Marcus had convinced me to trade that power for the gilded cage of being Mrs. Sterling. My phone chimed, a message from Howard Sterling. "Saw your interview. You've given the company something it hasn't had in years. A future. Thank you." Sarah cleared her throat. "There is one other matter. The penthouse. Ah, yes, our marital home. Marcus had been forced to move out, but I'd kept it more out of principle than attachment." "List it," I decided. "I found a place in Tribeca. Something more suited to a tech CEO than a society wife." "And the Hamptons estate?" "Donate it to the new Reynolds Foundation. It'll make an excellent retreat center for our STEM education initiative." The irony wasn't lost on me. The very properties Marcus had used to cage me were now being repurposed to empower others. A notification popped up on my laptop. Our AI division had just secured a major government contract. The same contract Marcus had dismissed as too complicated 6 months ago. I forwarded it to Amanda with a simple message. "Well done." 1. "More thing," Sarah added, pulling up an email. "The Women's Business Council wants you to deliver their keynote address next month. Theme is Reinvention and Renaissance." I thought of all the women like me, brilliant minds compressed into ornamental roles. Except, it's time to share the playbook. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Manhattan as I reviewed quarterly projections. Each number, each graph, Each strategic initiative represented another nail in the coffin of Marcus's old-world corporate culture. He had spent years gradually dimming my light, never realizing he was giving me time to study his weaknesses, to plan his obsolescence. My new office phone rang. The private line only 5 people had the number for. The caller ID showed Marcus's father's number. "Charlotte," Howard's voice was warm. "I've been thinking about what you said in your interview, about meritocracy." He paused. "There's something you should know about some other holdings of mine. Companies Marcus doesn't even know exist. I'd like to discuss their future over dinner." I smiled, remembering Marcus's constant complaints about his father's secretive business dealings. "I'd be delighted, Howard. I have a feeling this is the beginning of an even more interesting partnership." After hanging up, I sat back in my chair, enjoying the quiet satisfaction of pieces falling into place. Marcus had wanted a wife who would decorate his arm and maintain his home. Instead, he'd married a woman who had taken everything, his company, his reputation, his future, and transformed it into something far greater than he could have imagined. The sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of victory. 6. Weeks into my leadership of Reynolds Global, formerly Sterling Enterprises, the first real signs of resistance began to surface. It started with whispers in corner offices, grew through encrypted emails, and culminated in a presentation folder placed on my desk early Tuesday morning. "Concerned Shareholders Report," read the cover in austere typography. Inside, a detailed critique of my aggressive modernization efforts, signed by a coalition of old money investors, all members of Marcus's former social circle. Their message was clear: slow down, stick to tradition, or face a proxy fight. I was reviewing their demands when Amanda Chen burst into my office, tablet in hand. "Have you seen this? They're calling us digital carpetbaggers in their private communications, as if pushing the company into the 21st century is some kind of hostile invasion." "Marcus's old guard was bound to push back eventually," I replied, noting the familiar names on the document. All men who've had dinner at my table, praised my hosting skills, and never once asked about my tech background. Sarah Mitchell entered next, her expression grave. "It's more organized than we thought. Richard Matthews, the former CFO, has been meeting with institutional investors. They're painting you as an activist CEO more interested in personal vengeance than corporate stability." I stood, walking to the window wall that offered a view of the city I was reshaping. "How many shares do they control?" 22%, Sarah answered. "Not enough for a takeover, but enough to make noise." "And how's our stock performing?" Amanda grinned. "Up 38% since you took control. The tech sector can't stop talking about our quantum computing initiative." I turned back to my desk, pressing the intercom. "James, call a board meeting for tomorrow morning. Full attendance required." Then to Sarah, "Get me everything on Matthew's tenure as CFO. Every decision, every transaction, every lunch receipt." "Already done," she produced another folder. "You were right about the patterns." He wasn't just covering for Marcus's indiscretions. He was running his own side games. The next hours were a blur of strategic planning. By evening, we had mapped out every connection between the dissenting shareholders, every vulnerability in their alliance. Howard Sterling called to offer his insights. He'd played this game longer than any of them. "They're not just fighting your changes," he observed. "They're fighting what you represent. A woman who won't be contained by their rules, who beats them at their own game. Marcus is just their figurehead." Speaking of Marcus, I pulled up a recent report. He's been spotted meeting with Chinese investors, trying to build a rival firm. Howard's laugh crackled through the phone. "With what? His golf club membership and my old contacts? You already control the relationships that matter." After the call, I summoned my core team. Amanda brought the tech division's latest projections, innovations that would leave the old Sterling Enterprises model in the dust. Sarah arrived with detailed files on each opposing shareholder. Even Patricia, my former rival's assistant now promoted to operations director, contributed insights into the old guard's weaknesses. "They're planning to speak at tomorrow's board meeting," Patricia revealed. "Matthews will lead the charge. They think they can shame you into retreating." I smiled, remembering all the charity galas where these men had patted my hand and called me dear. "Then let's make sure we're ready for them." The next morning, I dressed with precise intention, a Bottega Veneta suit in steel gray, subtle armor for corporate warfare. The boardroom filled slowly. tension crackling as the two factions took their seats. Matthews sat directly opposite me, his confidence radiating like cheap cologne. "Before we begin," he stood, waving the shareholders' report, "we need to discuss the company's alarming departure from proven strategies." "Fascinating timing," I interrupted smoothly. "I was just about to discuss strategy. Specifically, the strategy that let privileged mediocrity flourish while innovation died." I nodded to James, who distributed new folders to each board member. "Please turn to page 3. The room fell silent as they read. Matthews's face turned pale. "What you're seeing," I continued, "is a comprehensive audit of the last 5 years. Unauthorized bonuses, inflated contracts with friends' companies, systematic suppression of internal innovation to protect outdated business models, all under our former CFO's careful management." You can't," Matthews sputtered. "Page 12 details your personal trades made with inside information. Page 15 shows how you helped Marcus hide his more personal indiscretions through creative accounting. The SEC has already received copies." The opposing shareholders shifted uncomfortably. Their spokesman, a silver-haired venture capitalist named Harrison, cleared his throat. "Now, Charlotte, surely we can discuss this privately." "Ms. Reynolds," I corrected. "And no, Harrison, we can't. Just like we couldn't discuss it when I raised concerns about the company's direction at your dinner parties. Remember? You told me to focus on redecorating my summer house." I stood, commanding the room's attention. "Gentlemen, you have 2 choices. Support the company's new direction or sell your shares, which our friend Howard Sterling has expressed interest in acquiring. Either way, the old Sterling Enterprises died the day Marcus underestimated his wife for the last time." The meeting ended an hour later. Matthews resigned for personal reasons. 3 opposing shareholders sold their stakes by day's end. Harrison asked to meet privately to reconsider his position. That evening, I sat in my office reviewing victory reports when Sarah brought in a special delivery, a newspaper from Singapore. On page 6, a small article announced Victoria Chen's engagement to a local tech entrepreneur. "Looks like she's finally found success on her own terms," Sarah observed. "Good for her," I replied sincerely. "Sometimes it takes losing everything to remember who you really are." My phone buzzed, a message from Marcus. "You've destroyed everything I built." I typed back, "No, darling, I've built something you never could." Then I blocked his number, turning back to the future I was creating. The opposition had played their hand and lost. Now everyone knew. I wasn't just Marcus's revenge-seeking ex-wife. I was a force that had been waiting in the shadows, gathering strength, preparing to reshape an empire. The old boys' club had tried to stop me. Instead, they'd just proven why their time was over. The quarterly earnings call was minutes away when Amanda rushed into my office, her usual composure fractured by urgency. "We have a problem. A massive cyber attack just hit our quantum computing servers. Someone's trying to steal our new technology." I straightened in my chair, already pulling up security protocols on my tablet. The timing wasn't coincidental. Our breakthrough announcement was scheduled for tomorrow's tech conference. Pattern of the attack? Sophisticated, professional. Amanda's fingers flew over her keyboard. They knew exactly where to hit us. This isn't some random hacker. They had inside knowledge. The pieces clicked into place. Last week's network. Scan had detected unusual activity from terminals accessed by former employees. All people Marcus had placed in key positions. I'd kept them on during the transition to avoid disruption, but clearly, that had been a miscalculation. "Lock down." "Everything," I ordered, pressing the intercom. "James, delay the earnings call by 30 minutes. Tell them we're having technical difficulties, which isn't exactly a lie." Sarah burst in next, her legal mind already 3 steps ahead. "The timing suggests insider trading. Someone's betting against our stock before the tech announcement." I pulled up the trading records on my screen. Sure enough, there had been significant short positions taken against Reynolds Global in the past 48 hours. The pattern was familiar, the same aggressive strategy Marcus had used in his hostile takeovers. "He's working with our competitors," I realized, seeing the full picture. "Using his knowledge of our systems to orchestrate an attack, then profiting from the chaos." A small part of me admired the audacity. It was exactly the kind of move I would have made. The student had learned from the master, even if he'd never admitted it. "What do you want to do?" Amanda asked, her team already working to repel the attack. I smiled, remembering something Marcus had never understood about me. Spring the trap. Over the next 20 minutes, we executed a plan I'd prepared for just such an occasion. While Amanda's team appeared to struggle against the attack, I made a series of calls to trusted journalists. The story would leak within the hour. Reynolds Global's quantum computing project had suffered a devastating setback. The stock began to fall as planned. Marcus and his allies would be celebrating, thinking their attack had succeeded. They didn't realize they were playing exactly into my hands. Time for Phase 2, I told Sarah. Release the real announcement. The press release went out globally. Reynolds Global hadn't just achieved a quantum computing breakthrough, we'd developed an entirely new security protocol. The cyber attack had been anticipated, allowed to proceed under controlled conditions, and had unwittingly helped us test our defensive systems in real-world conditions. The perfect demonstration of our technology's capabilities, I explained to the stunned earnings call participants 30 minutes later. What better way to prove our quantum security system works than to let actual corporate spies test it for us? The stock soared, catching the short sellers in a devastating squeeze. Marcus's attempt to destroy our announcement had instead become its most powerful endorsement. By the end of the day, Reynolds Global's market cap had increased by $12 billion. My contact at the SEC wants to meet, Sarah reported as the markets closed. We have proof of insider trading, corporate espionage, and market manipulation. Marcus is looking at serious charges. I waved her off. No, let him twist. Criminal charges would make him a martyr to the old guard. I want him to live with his failure. Amanda poked her head in. You need to see this. Victoria's sent us something interesting from Singapore. The email contained internal documents from Marcus's new venture. Everything from investor pitches to technical specifications. All of it copied before she'd left him, held as insurance, and now delivered to me. She's smarter than he ever gave her credit for, I mused, scanning the files. Make sure she receives a nice consulting fee for this intelligence. Anonymous. Of course. Later that evening, as the city lights blinked on outside my office, Howard Sterling paid me a visit. The old man settled into a chair, looking pleased. You knew Marcus would try something like this, he said. It wasn't a question. Of course. He never could resist a tactical strike. But he forgot who taught him corporate warfare in the first place. I poured us both a measure of scotch. Not Marcus's preferred brand, but a better one. You've transformed the company beyond my wildest expectations, Howard admitted. When I helped clear the path for your takeover, I thought you'd just modernize operations. Instead, you've turned Sterling Enterprises into something entirely new. Reynolds Global, I corrected gently. The old company died the day your son mistook possession for power. My phone lit up with another market alert. Our stock was still climbing in after hours trading. The quantum computing announcement had positioned us as a major tech player overnight. Marcus's attempted sabotage had only made the triumph sweeter. What will you do next? Howard asked, genuine curiosity in his aged eyes. I turned to the window, watching my reflection overlap with the city skyline. The tech sector is just the beginning. Marcus thought small, acquiring companies, making deals. I'm building something bigger, something that will outlast all of us. The old man nodded, understanding. He'd built an empire from nothing once. Now he was watching me build something even greater from its ashes. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with news. Marcus's nascent investment firm had lost its main backers. His attack on Reynolds Global had exposed his desperation, and the sharks could smell blood in the water. By trying to destroy my creation, he'd only succeeded in destroying his last chance at redemption. You know, Howard mused, he never did understand what real power looks like. He thought it was about control, about making others smaller. He never realized that true power is about vision, about making everything around you bigger. I raised my glass in agreement. The city sparkled beyond the windows, full of possibilities. Marcus had tried to put me in a box to make me less than I was. Instead, he'd given me the perfect launching pad for something far greater than revenge. A genuine corporate revolution. And this was just the beginning. The Time magazine photographer adjusted his camera as I stood in my new office at Reynolds Tower, formerly Sterling Plaza. The building's rebranding had been completed yesterday, the old brass letters replaced with sleek, illuminated signage that transformed the Manhattan skyline. Most Influential People of the Year wasn't just a magazine cover. It was validation of everything I'd built from the ashes of Marcus's empire. Just one more shot, the photographer said, but I held up a hand as my tablet lit up with an urgent notification. The Singapore acquisition had just cleared regulatory hurdles, 2 months ahead of schedule. I allowed myself a small smile, knowing this would hit the financial news within minutes. Actually, I told the photographer, let's move to the conference room. I want to show you something more interesting than a standard CEO portrait. Right on cue, the digital wall in the conference room lit up with live feeds from our global offices. Amanda Chen's team in Silicon Valley, the quantum computing division in Boston, our new AI research center in Singapore, all humming with the energy of innovation. This was the real story. Not just a corporate takeover, but a complete reinvention of what Sterling Enterprises had been. Ms. Reynolds, my assistant James appeared in the doorway. They're ready for you in the auditorium. I checked my watch. Cartier, but not the one Marcus had given me. This one was a gift to myself, purchased the day Reynolds Global's market cap exceeded $100 billion. How many attended? Standing room only. Every major tech publication, plus the business press. The elevator ride down gave me a moment to reflect. 3 months had passed since Marcus's failed cyber attack. In that time, Reynolds Global had launched 4 major initiatives, acquired 2 cutting-edge startups, and completely restructured its global operations. The old guard who had opposed me were now either gone or had become my strongest advocates. Amazing what success could do to change perspectives. The auditorium was indeed packed. I recognized faces from Fortune, Forbes, TechCrunch, even several of Marcus's former allies in the financial press. They'd come to witness what everyone was calling the Reynolds Revolution. Sarah Mitchell waited backstage, tablet in hand. The contracts are signed. Should I include it in the announcement? I nodded, scanning the final details of our latest acquisition. It was poetic justice. We'd just purchased the tech firm that had rejected my innovations 15 years ago, back when Marcus had first convinced me to take a break from my career. Taking the stage, I felt the energy in the room shift. These weren't the patronizing stares I'd endured at Marcus's corporate events. This was the focused attention reserved for true business leaders. 3 months ago, I began, I promised that Reynolds Global would redefine corporate innovation. Today, I'm announcing the largest technology investment initiative in our company's history. The presentation flowed seamlessly: quantum security platforms, AI integration, sustainable tech development. With each announcement, I could see the story taking shape in the journalists' minds. This wasn't just corporate success. This was a vision of the future. One final announcement, I concluded. Reynolds Global is establishing the Future Leaders Foundation with an initial endowment of $500 million. Its mission, to identify and support innovative women in technology who have been overlooked or underestimated. Because talent doesn't always wear a suit and tie. The press conference that followed was electric. Questions flew about the company's trajectory, our aggressive expansion, the foundation's goals. No one asked about Marcus or the takeover anymore. Those stories felt like ancient history compared to what we were building. Back in my office, Howard Sterling waited with a copy of the Wall Street Journal. The headline read, Reynolds Global sets new standard for tech innovation. Quite a change from the society pages, he smiled, referencing the days when I'd only made news as Marcus's wife at charity galas. The foundation was your idea, I reminded him, though I doubt this was what Marcus had in mind when he said, I should focus on charity work. Marcus never understood the difference between power and control. Howard settled into a chair. He thought keeping you in a gilded cage made him powerful. He never realized he was just creating pressure in a sealed container. My phone buzzed, Amanda Chen with updates from Silicon Valley. Our quantum computing platform had just achieved another breakthrough. The stock would soar again tomorrow. I heard Marcus is in London, Howard mentioned casually, trying to raise capital for a new venture fund. I pulled up our latest market data. I know. 3 of his potential investors contacted us last week, looking to invest in Reynolds Global instead. Apparently, his pitch meetings aren't going well. And Victoria? Thriving in Singapore. She's heading our Asia-Pacific tech initiatives now. Turns out she has quite a talent for spotting innovative startups. When you remove toxic influences, people often surprise you. The sun was setting over Manhattan, casting long shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Below, The new Reynolds Global logo glowed against the darkening sky, a beacon of transformation. "You know what the best revenge is?" I asked Howard, not really expecting an answer. "It's not destroying what someone built. It's building something so much greater that their achievements become footnotes in your success story." He raised his glass in agreement. "To footnotes, then." I smiled, watching the city lights blink on. Marcus had tried to make me small, to fit me into his narrow vision of what a wife should be. Instead, he'd given me the motivation to dream bigger than he ever could. Reynolds Global wasn't just a renamed company, it was proof that the most dangerous force in business is a woman who's been underestimated for the last time. The London weather matched my mood, sharp, bright, and charged with potential. From my suite at the Dorchester, I watched morning sunlight glint off the Thames while reviewing the final details of today's announcement. Reynolds Global wasn't just acquiring another company. We were absorbing Marcus's last hope for relevance in the business world. "The European Commission has approved the merger." Sarah's voice came through the secure line. Marcus's lawyers tried to block it, claiming conflict of interest, but the regulators dismissed their objections. "We can proceed whenever you're ready." I adjusted my Chanel jacket, black with subtle gold threading, chosen specifically for this moment. "And our friend in Singapore?" Victoria's intelligence was perfect. The tech division Marcus thought he was acquiring is practically worthless. All the key developers jumped ship months ago. They're joining our quantum team instead. The irony was delicious. Marcus had spent 6 months putting together what he thought would be his comeback, a European tech conglomerate that could compete with Reynolds Global. What he hadn't realized was that I'd been quietly laying the groundwork to acquire his target company long before he'd even approached them. My phone lit up with a message from Amanda Chen. "Quantum platform integration complete, ready to demonstrate at the conference." Perfect timing. In 3 hours, I would take the stage at the European Tech Summit, the same event where, years ago, Marcus had first suggested I step back from my career. Today, I'd be announcing not just an acquisition, but a technological revolution that would make Reynolds Global the undisputed leader in quantum computing. The car ride to the conference center gave me time to reflect. The past week had been a cascade of victories. Our stock had hit another all-time high. The Future Leaders Foundation had announced its first class of fellowship recipients, and our Singapore expansion was exceeding all projections. "Ms. Reynolds," James handed me a tablet as we pulled up to the venue. "You'll want to see this." The screen showed a live feed from New York, Marcus, attempting to hold an impromptu press conference outside the old Sterling building. The crowd was thin, the questions skeptical. How far he'd fallen from the days when his every business move made headlines. "Should we be concerned?" James asked. I shook my head, watching Marcus gesture emphatically to the diminishing group of reporters. "He's announcing his opposition to the merger. Let him waste his breath. By the time he finishes speaking, the deal will be done." The conference center hummed with anticipation. Tech leaders, investors, and journalists filled the auditorium, all wondering why Reynolds Global had chosen this particular event for our major announcement. In the front row, I spotted several familiar faces. Board members who had once dismissed me as Marcus's trophy wife, now eager to claim they'd supported me all along. Howard Sterling's message arrived just as I was preparing to take the stage. "Give them hell, my dear." The spotlight felt familiar now, like an old friend. The audience fell silent as I took my position at the podium, the Reynolds Global logo glowing behind me on massive screens. 6 years ago, I stood in this very room, I began, and was told that women like me should leave technology to the men, that our role was to support from the shadows, to be satisfied with reflecting others' glory. Today, I'm here to announce that those days are over. The screens behind me came alive with live feeds from our quantum computing facilities worldwide. Reynolds Global isn't just acquiring another company. We're launching a new era of technological innovation, one where talent and vision matter more than tradition and gender. The announcement unfolded like a perfectly choreographed dance, each revelation, built upon the last, painting a picture of not just corporate expansion, but complete industry transformation. When I finally revealed the price of the acquisition, significantly lower than the market had expected, thanks to our careful maneuvering, the audience erupted in applause. "One final announcement," I said, saving the best for last. "The company we're acquiring today? It's the same one that rejected my quantum computing proposals 7 years ago. the same one that told me my ideas were too ambitious for a woman. Today, they're worth billions, but only because we're buying them to access their market position. Their technology? I allowed myself a small smile. Obsolete compared to what we've developed. The press conference afterward was a feeding frenzy. Questions flew about the merger, our technology, the future of quantum computing. No one mentioned Marcus or his failed counterbid. He had become irrelevant to the story. Back in my hotel suite, Sarah waited with the final numbers. The merger had added $20 billion to our market cap in a single day. Marcus's attempted press conference had been cut short when reporters left to cover our announcement instead. Victoria sent an interesting report, Sarah mentioned, sliding across a folder. Apparently, Marcus tried to approach our Singapore partners last week. They didn't even take the meeting. I moved to the window, watching London's lights blink on in the gathering dusk. You know what Marcus never understood about power? It's not about who you can control. It's about who wants to work with you. He spent years building walls while I was building bridges. My phone buzzed with another message. Amanda Chen sharing video of our quantum platform's latest test results. The technology we'd developed wasn't just revolutionary. It was about to make everything Marcus had fought for completely obsolete. The Future Leaders Foundation received over 10,000 applications for the next fellowship round, Sarah reported. Every major tech company is trying to partner with us now. Even Marcus's old allies are begging to be involved. I smiled, remembering all the patronizing pats on the head, all the dismissive remarks at board meetings. Success is the best revenge, but do you know what's even better? Creating opportunities for others who've been underestimated. Every woman we help, rise is another crack in their glass ceiling. The city stretched out below, a tapestry of lights and possibilities. Marcus had tried to dim my light, never realizing he was just teaching me how to harness the darkness. Now I wasn't just shining. I was illuminating the path for others, and we were just getting started. The United Nations conference room buzzed with anticipation as I prepared to address the Women's Economic Forum. Below the podium, faces both familiar and new filled the chamber. Tech leaders, corporate executives, and most importantly, young women at the start of their careers. The kind of audience Marcus had never thought I deserved. 512 days, I began, my voice carrying through the historic chamber. That's how long it took to transform Reynolds Global from a traditional investment firm into the world's leading quantum technology company. But the real transformation began years earlier, in moments of silence when I was expected to be nothing more than decorative. From my position at the podium, I could see the livestream numbers climbing. Over 2 million viewers had tuned in to hear not about corporate takeovers or stock prices, but about revolution, the kind that happens quietly in boardrooms and back offices, when underestimated women finally show their true potential. Last quarter, Reynolds Global did something unprecedented, I continued, pulling up our latest initiative on the massive screens. We analyzed our global workforce and discovered that companies led by previously overlooked talent, particularly women who had been sidelined or discouraged, consistently outperformed their peers by 47%. The data flowed across the screens, charts, graphs, undeniable evidence that diversity wasn't just morally right, it was profitable. In the front row, I spotted several of Marcus's old allies, men who had once dismissed my business acumen. They were furiously taking notes now. As a result, Reynolds Global is launching the Phoenix Initiative. The audience stirred at the announcement. A $10 billion global program to identify and support companies led by women who were told to step back from their careers. Because talent doesn't disappear when it's ignored, it smolders, waiting for the right moment to rise. Amanda Chen, watching from our Singapore office via video link, gave me a subtle thumbs up. She had helped design the initiative, drawing from her own experience of being overlooked in Silicon Valley. Now she was one of the most powerful tech executives in Asia. But this isn't about revenge, I emphasized, thinking of Marcus and his failed attempts to rebuild his career. It's about resurrection, about taking the very things meant to diminish us and using them as fuel for transformation. The presentation shifted to showcase our first Phoenix Initiative partners, 20 companies led by women with stories similar to mine. Brilliant minds who had been relegated to supporting roles, who had used their time in the shadows to study, plan, and prepare for their moment. The past week had been a cascade of victories, Our stock had hit another all-time high. The Future Leaders Foundation had announced its first class of fellowship recipients, and our Singapore expansion was exceeding all projections. "Ms. Reynolds," James handed me a tablet as we pulled up to the venue. "You'll want to see this." The screen showed a live feed from New York, Marcus, attempting to hold an impromptu press conference outside the old Sterling building. The crowd was thin, the questions skeptical. How far he'd fallen from the days when his every business move made headlines. "Should we be concerned?" James asked. I shook my head, watching Marcus gesture emphatically to the diminishing group of reporters. "He's announcing his opposition to the merger. Let him waste his breath. By the time he finishes speaking, the deal will be done." The conference center hummed with anticipation. Tech leaders, investors, and journalists filled the auditorium, all wondering why Reynolds Global had chosen this particular event for our major announcement. In the front row, I spotted several familiar faces. Board members who had once dismissed me as Marcus's trophy wife, now eager to claim they'd supported me all along. Howard Sterling's message arrived just as I was preparing to take the stage. "Give them hell, my dear." The spotlight felt familiar now, like an old friend. The audience fell silent as I took my position at the podium, the Reynolds Global logo glowing behind me on massive screens. 6 years ago, I stood in this very room, I began, and was told that women like me should leave technology to the men, that our role was to support from the shadows, to be satisfied with reflecting others' glory. Today, I'm here to announce that those days are over. The screens behind me came alive with live feeds from our quantum computing facilities worldwide. Reynolds Global isn't just acquiring another company. We're launching a new era of technological innovation, one where talent and vision matter more than tradition and gender. The announcement unfolded like a perfectly choreographed dance, each revelation, built upon the last, painting a picture of not just corporate expansion, but complete industry transformation. When I finally revealed the price of the acquisition, significantly lower than the market had expected, thanks to our careful maneuvering, the audience erupted in applause. "One final announcement," I said, saving the best for last. "The company we're acquiring today? It's the same one that rejected my quantum computing proposals 7 years ago, the same one that told me my ideas were too ambitious for a woman. Today, they're worth billions, but only because we're buying them to access their market position. Their technology?" I allowed myself a small smile. Obsolete compared to what we've developed. The press conference afterward was a feeding frenzy. Questions flew about the merger, our technology, the future of quantum computing. No one mentioned Marcus or his failed counterbid. He had become irrelevant to the story. Back in my hotel suite, Sarah waited with the final numbers. The merger had added $20 billion to our market cap in a single day. Marcus's attempted press conference had been cut short when reporters left to cover our announcement instead. "Victoria sent an interesting report," Sarah mentioned, sliding across a folder. "Apparently, Marcus tried to approach our Singapore partners last week. They didn't even take the meeting." I moved to the window, watching London's lights blink on in the gathering dusk. "You know what Marcus never understood about power? It's not about who you can control. It's about who wants to work with you. He spent years building walls while I was building bridges." My phone buzzed with another message. Amanda Chen sharing video of our quantum platform's latest test results. The technology we'd developed wasn't just revolutionary. It was about to make everything Marcus had fought for completely obsolete. "The Future Leaders Foundation received over 10,000 applications for the next fellowship round," Sarah reported. "Every major tech company is trying to partner with us now. Even Marcus's old allies are begging to be involved." I smiled, remembering all the patronizing pats on the head, all the dismissive remarks at board meetings. Success is the best revenge, but do you know what's even better? Creating opportunities for others who've been underestimated. Every woman we help, rise is another crack in their glass ceiling. The city stretched out below, a tapestry of lights and possibilities. Marcus had tried to dim my light, never realizing he was just teaching me how to harness the darkness. Now I wasn't just shining. I was illuminating the path for others, and we were just getting started. The United Nations conference room buzzed with anticipation as I prepared to address the Women's Economic Forum. Below the podium, faces both familiar and new filled the chamber. Tech leaders, corporate executives, and most importantly, young women at the start of their careers. The Kind of audience Marcus had never thought I deserved. 512 days, I began, my voice carrying through the historic chamber. That's how long it took to transform Reynolds Global from a traditional investment firm into the world's leading quantum technology company. But the real transformation began years earlier, in moments of silence when I was expected to be nothing more than decorative. From my position at the podium, I could see the livestream numbers climbing. Over 2 million viewers had tuned in to hear not about corporate takeovers or stock prices, but about revolution, the kind that happens quietly, in boardrooms and back offices, when underestimated women finally show their true potential. Last quarter, Reynolds Global did something unprecedented, I continued, pulling up our latest initiative on the massive screens. We analyzed our global workforce and discovered that companies led by previously overlooked talent, particularly women who had been sidelined or discouraged, consistently outperformed their peers by 47%. The data flowed across the screens, charts, graphs, undeniable evidence that diversity wasn't just morally right, it was profitable. In the front row, I spotted several of Marcus's old allies, men who had once dismissed my business acumen. They were furiously taking notes now. As a result, Reynolds Global is launching the Phoenix Initiative. The audience stirred at the announcement. A $10 billion global program to identify and support companies led by women who were told to step back from their careers. Because talent doesn't disappear when it's ignored, it smolders, waiting for the right moment to rise. Amanda Chen, watching from our Singapore office via video link, gave me a subtle thumbs up. She had helped design the initiative, drawing from her own experience of being overlooked in Silicon Valley. Now she was one of the most powerful tech executives in Asia. But this isn't about revenge, I emphasized, thinking of Marcus and his failed attempts to rebuild his career. It's about resurrection, about taking the very things meant to diminish us and using them as fuel for transformation. The presentation shifted to showcase our first Phoenix Initiative partners, 20 companies led by women with stories similar to mine. Brilliant minds who had been relegated to supporting roles, who had used their time in the shadows to study, plan, and prepare for their moment. Sarah Mitchell, seated in the diplomatic section, slid a tablet onto the podium during my pause for water. Breaking news. Marcus's last remaining business venture, a small investment consultancy in London, had just filed for bankruptcy. I felt no joy at the news. He had become irrelevant to my story long ago. Yesterday, someone asked me if I missed being Mrs. Sterling, I continued, drawing knowing laughs from the audience. The question surprised me because I had to stop and remember that role, the quiet wife, the perfect hostess, the woman who was expected to shrink herself to fit someone else's image. That person feels like a character in a story now, one that taught me valuable lessons about power and patience. The screens behind me shifted to show the new Reynolds Global campus under construction in Silicon Valley, a sprawling complex designed by a brilliant architect who had been told to focus on residential projects early in her career. The buildings resembled phoenix wings, rising from the earth in sweeping curves of glass and steel. The future doesn't belong to those who cling to traditional power, I declared, watching the audience lean forward. It belongs to those who understand that true strength lies in lifting others as you rise. Reynolds Global isn't just a company anymore, it's a movement. Victoria Chen, now our head of Asia-Pacific operations, appeared on the video wall, ready to announce our latest quantum computing breakthrough. The timing was perfect, proof that innovation flourishes when talent is unleashed. After the standing ovation, after the press interviews and diplomatic meetings, I found myself in a quiet moment in the UN's meditation room. Howard Sterling's message waited on my phone. You've created something I never imagined possible when I helped clear your path to power. This isn't just about business anymore, is it? I smiled, thinking of all the women I'd met today, each with her own story of being underestimated, each now ready to rise. No, I typed back. This is about changing the game entirely. My next appointment was with a group of tech students, young women from around the world, each brilliant, each carrying dreams bigger than the boxes others tried to put them in. They didn't want to hear about my takeover of Sterling Enterprises. They wanted to know about transformation, about using perceived weaknesses as hidden strengths. Looking into their eager faces, I saw reflections of myself from years ago. The ambitious tech entrepreneur Marcus had tried to turn into a trophy wife. He had thought he was dimming my light. Instead, he had taught me to see in the dark, to navigate the shadows, to build something powerful in silence. Your story isn't just about business success, one student observed during the Q&A. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. I thought about that as my car wound through Manhattan traffic later that evening. The Reynolds Global logo glowed atop our building, a beacon in the night sky. Marcus had wanted to contain me within his world. Instead, he had inadvertently helped me create a universe of my own, one where being underestimated was no longer a limitation, but a launchpad for revolution. The future wasn't just about corporate success anymore. It was about unleashing all the brilliant minds that had been told to stay small, to step back, to wait their turn. Their time had come, and I was just getting started. The private dining room at Le Bernardin wasn't my usual choice for meetings, but today's encounter demanded neutral territory. Through the restaurant's tasteful lighting, I watched Marcus fidget with his water glass, his once immaculate appearance showing signs of wear. His Italian suit, while still expensive, hung slightly loose on his frame, and faint shadows lurked under his eyes. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he said, his voice lacking its former smooth confidence. The past 8 months had stripped away more than his corporate empire. They'd eroded the very foundation of his self-image. I took a measured sip of water, letting the silence stretch. Around us, the lunch service hummed with quiet efficiency. "Your message said it was important." He reached for his briefcase, not the handmade leather one he'd once proudly displayed, but a simpler model. "I have a proposal, a way to resolve things between us." Sarah Mitchell, seated quietly to my left, raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. We'd anticipated this meeting, planned for every possible scenario. Marcus was nothing if not predictable in his desperation. "I've been doing some thinking," he continued, spreading documents on the table. "About the company, about our history. I realize now that I made mistakes." "Mistakes?" I kept my voice neutral, though I noticed his flinch at the word. "Is that what you call systematically undermining my career, dismissing my expertise, and flaunting your affair in our social circle?" He shifted uncomfortably. "I was wrong. About everything. The company's performance under your leadership proves that, which is why I think we could work together again." There it was, the real reason for this meeting. I glanced at the documents he'd laid out. Proposals for a new joint venture, terms for his return to Reynolds Global in an advisory capacity, even a suggested press release about reconciliation and renewal. "Your timing is interesting," I observed, not touching the papers. "Did this epiphany happen before or after your London venture failed?" Marcus's jaw tightened briefly before he forced a smile. "I know how this looks, but think about it. My experience, my connections, combined with your vision. We could be unstoppable." Sarah made a small sound that might have been a laugh. I held up a hand, silencing her. "Tell me, Marcus, in all the time you spent planning this pitch, did you ever stop to consider one crucial detail?" "What's that?" "I don't need you anymore." The words hung in the air between us, simple but devastating. I watched the reality sink in, not just of my rejection, but of how completely the power dynamic had shifted. "The connections you're offering? I've built stronger ones. The experience you're touting? It's obsolete in the world I'm creating. Reynolds Global isn't just surpassing what Sterling Enterprises was. We're redefining what a modern corporation can be." I gestured to James, who had been waiting discreetly by the door. He brought over a sleek folder emblazoned with the Reynolds Global logo. Since you're here, though, I have a proposal of my own. I slid the folder across the table. The Phoenix Initiative is acquiring distressed companies with potential for innovation. Your failed London venture fits our criteria. Marcus stared at the document, his face a mix of disbelief and dawning comprehension. You want to buy my company? What's left of it? Sarah interjected smoothly. Our offer is fair, more than fair given its current market value. This is absurd, he sputtered, but his hands shook slightly as he opened the folder. I built that company from borrowed money, outdated strategies, and desperation. I finished for him. Now you have a choice. Sell to us. Let us transform it into something meaningful, or watch it collapse completely. Either way, your chapter in this story is ending. The maitre d' appeared with our first course, his timing impeccable, as he described the delicate composition of each dish. I watched Marcus's internal struggle play across his face. Why are you doing this? He finally asked, his voice quiet. Because unlike you, Marcus, I understand the difference between revenge and revolution. This isn't about hurting you. It's about creating something bigger than either of us. The Phoenix Initiative takes failing companies and gives them new purpose, new leadership, new life. I gestured to the window where the Reynolds Global Tower dominated the skyline. Look around. While you were trying to recreate your past, I was building the future. A future where being underestimated isn't a setback, it's a superpower. The rest of lunch passed in relative silence. Marcus picked at his food while Sarah outlined the acquisition terms. By dessert, his shoulders had slumped in resignation. The papers will be ready tomorrow, Sarah informed him as we prepared to leave. Standard confidentiality agreements, of course. I stood, smoothing my Dior dress, chosen specifically because it was so different from anything I'd worn as Mrs. Sterling. One more thing, Marcus. Victoria sends her regards. She's been nominated for Tech Leader of the Year in Singapore. His head snapped up at that, but I was already walking away, Sarah falling into step beside me. Through the restaurant's windows, I caught our reflection. Two powerful women striding purposefully toward the future, leaving the past where it belonged. Well, Sarah mused as we entered our waiting car. That's the last piece of the old Sterling empire. I smiled, watching the city scroll past. No, that's the last piece of my old life. Everything from here on is new territory. My phone lit up with updates. The quantum computing division's latest breakthrough, the Phoenix Initiative's growing success stories, the upcoming UN Summit on Women in Technology. Marcus and his outdated world of male privilege were becoming exactly what they'd tried to make me, a footnote in someone else's success story. The Harvard Business School auditorium fell silent as I concluded my guest lecture. A sea of eager faces looked up at me, particularly from the female students, who made up nearly half the class, a stark contrast to when I'd sat in these same seats 20 years ago, one of only a handful of women in the room. Last question, the professor announced, gesturing to a student in the back. Ms. Reynolds, the young woman stood, confidence radiating from her posture. You've revolutionized corporate leadership and created the Phoenix Initiative, but there are still critics who say you've gone too far. That the aggressive acquisition of traditionally male-led companies is more about personal vendetta than business strategy. How do you respond? I smiled, reminded of similar questions I'd faced in my early days as a tech entrepreneur. Let me tell you about a meeting I had yesterday. The CEO of a major tech firm, male, naturally, suggested that Reynolds Global's success in quantum computing was because we had gotten lucky with our research. He seemed genuinely puzzled when I pulled out the patents I'd filed 15 years ago, outlining the very technology we're implementing today. Knowing laughter rippled through the audience. The truth is, what looks like aggressive acquisition to some is simply the market finally recognizing value that was always there. The Phoenix Initiative doesn't target companies because of their leadership's gender, We target potential that's been suppressed by outdated thinking. After the lecture, I met with the business school's dean in her office. Through the window, autumn leaves danced across Harvard Yard, gold and crimson against the gray sky. Your endowment of the Women in Innovation Center is transforming our program, she said, reviewing the latest data. Applications from female students are up 60%. And how many of them were told to focus on marketing instead of finance or tech? I asked, remembering my own academic advisor's suggestions. Too many, but that's changing, thanks to leaders like you. My phone buzzed. Amanda Chen with updates from Singapore. Our latest quantum security platform had just landed a major government contract. More importantly, 3 of the lead developers were women who'd been passed over for promotion at their previous companies. The car ride to the airport gave me time to review the morning's market reports. Reynolds Global's stock had hit another record high, fueled by news of our latest acquisition, a promising biotech firm led by a brilliant researcher who'd been sidelined by her male colleagues. Interesting development in London, Sarah noted, scanning her tablet. Marcus's former CFO is trying to rebuild his old investment group, looking for venture capital. I glanced at the proposal she handed me. Let me guess. All-male leadership. Traditional hierarchy? Focus on proven strategies? Like stepping back in time 20 years. Sarah's smile was predatory. Want me to arrange a meeting? No need. I pulled up our acquisition criteria. Have the Phoenix team review them. If there's real potential buried under the old boy attitudes, we'll consider it. If not, I shrugged. The market has a way of dealing with dinosaurs. At 30,000 feet, over a dinner I barely tasted, I reviewed applications for the next round of Phoenix Initiative funding. Each proposal told a similar story. Brilliant minds held back by systemic barriers. Innovative ideas dismissed because they didn't fit traditional models. Ms. Reynolds, James appeared with an urgent message. Howard Sterling is asking for a meeting, says it's important. I found Howard waiting in my Manhattan office when we landed. At 93, he still carried himself with the dignity of the empire builder he'd been, though his shoulders stooped more than they had a year ago. You've exceeded every expectation, he said without preamble. What you've built. It's beyond anything I imagined when I helped clear your path to power. But, I could hear it in his tone. He sighed, settling into a chair. Marcus is getting married again. To someone very much like you were when he first met you. Brilliant. Ambitious, successful in her own right. And you're worried history will repeat itself? I'm worried he hasn't learned anything, that he'll try to dim another light. I moved to the window, watching the city sparkle below. What would you like me to do about it, Howard? Talk to her. Not to warn her away. Marcus will do that himself eventually. But to let her know there's another path. That being underestimated doesn't mean being powerless. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here was Marcus's father, asking me to protect another woman from his son's pattern of suppression. Send me her information. I'll have Sarah arrange a lunch. After Howard left, I stood in my office, so different from the feminine, unthreatening space I'd maintained as Mrs. Sterling. The walls displayed patents instead of art, awards instead of family photos. On my desk, a small crystal phoenix caught the light, sending rainbow refractions across my workspace. Amanda's face appeared on my video screen. The quantum team has something you need to see. We've made a breakthrough. As she walked me through the technical details, I thought about Howard's request. Marcus was about to repeat his pattern with a new victim, not realizing that the world had changed, that women like his new fiancée had role models now, had paths to power that didn't require dimming their light. One more thing, Amanda added before signing off. Victoria's been nominated for a major innovation award. The ceremony's next month in Singapore. I smiled, remembering the insecure secretary who'd thought sleeping with the boss was her only path to success. Now she was revolutionizing tech development in Asia, proving that talent only needs the right environment to flourish. My phone lit up with another message from Marcus's fiancée herself. She wanted to meet, to clear the air before the wedding. Her tone was confident, assured. She thought she understood the situation, just as I once had. Except, I told him, James, but not here. At the Women's Innovation Center at Harvard, let her see what's possible when ambitious women refuse to step back. The phoenix on my desk caught the last rays of sunset, its crystal facets glowing like captured fire. Marcus had tried to turn me into decoration, never realizing he was giving me time to study, to plan, to prepare for revolution. Now, watching night fall over my transformed empire, I smiled at the thought of his new attempt at control. Some men never learned, but thanks to the Phoenix Initiative, their women would never again have to learn submission. The Women's Innovation Center at Harvard cast long shadows across the courtyard as Emma Chen, Marcus's new fiancée, walked through its glass doors. I watched her approach. Confident stride, impeccable presentation, radiating the same ambitious energy I'd once possessed before Marcus had tried to contain it. Ms. Reynolds, she extended her hand, grip firm and professional. Thank you for meeting me here. Her eyes darted around the center, taking in the state-of-the-art research facilities, the wall of success stories, the bustling energy of unleashed potential. An interesting choice of venue, I noted, leading her through the quantum computing lab where 3 doctoral candidates were developing next-generation security protocols. Your message suggested you wanted to discuss Marcus. Actually, she smiled, and I caught a glimpse of steel beneath the polish. I wanted to discuss Reynolds Global's newest acquisition target. The biotech firm you've been circling, it's my company. I paused, reassessing her with new interest. This wasn't the conversation I'd expected. Innovative pharmaceuticals. You've developed a promising cancer treatment protocol, which Marcus suggested I sell to him at a fraction of its value. Her smile turned knowing. He thought I didn't know about your history, thought I was just another ambitious woman he could guide into a more suitable role. We reached my private office in the center, a space deliberately designed to showcase female achievement in tech and business. Through the windows, we could see young women moving purposefully between research labs and innovation spaces. Tell me, I settled into my chair, genuinely curious, why accept his proposal if you knew his history? Emma's laugh held no warmth. The same reason you orchestrated his downfall instead of just leaving him. Sometimes the best way to change a system is from within. She pulled out a tablet, calling up market projections. I've spent the last 6 months documenting every attempt he's made to undervalue my company, every suggestion about stepping back from leadership. Understanding dawned. You're not here to clear the air. You're here to propose an alliance. The Phoenix Initiative transforms companies held back by outdated leadership, correct? She leaned forward, intensity radiating from her posture. My company has breakthrough technology, but we're fighting constant attempts at hostile takeover by Marcus and his remaining allies. They see a female-led biotech firm as easy prey. Sarah Mitchell chose that moment to enter, right on schedule. The market analysis you requested, she said, handing me a folder we'd prepared days ago, including the true value of innovative pharmaceuticals patent portfolio. Emma's eyes widened slightly as she saw the numbers. You've already done your homework, of course. I smiled, remembering my own days of careful preparation. The Phoenix Initiative doesn't just acquire companies, Ms. Chen. We identify potential that's been deliberately undervalued because of systemic bias. Then you understand what I'm proposing. She pulled up additional data on her tablet. A partnership, not a takeover. My company's medical innovations combined with Reynolds Global's quantum computing capabilities, we could revolutionize personalized medicine. Sarah and I exchanged glances. This was unexpected. Not another victim needing rescue, but a strategist who'd identified an opportunity and seized it. Marcus had unwittingly connected two forces capable of destroying his last attempts at relevance. You never intended to marry him, I realized, admiration coloring my tone. I intended to show him exactly what it feels like to be underestimated. Emma's smile was razor sharp. The question is, are you interested in being part of that lesson? The next hour was pure strategy. Emma's company wasn't just developing cancer treatments. They had an entire pipeline of breakthrough therapies held back by lack of computing power. Combined with our quantum platforms, the potential was staggering. One condition, I said as we finalized the framework. The merger announcement happens at your engagement party. Emma's eyes sparkled with mischief. Marcus has already planned it. All his remaining business allies will be there. He's hoping to use my company's reputation to rebuild his influence. Perfect. Sarah was already drafting the press release. Nothing like a room full of outdated thinking to witness the birth of something revolutionary. Later that evening, after Emma left with a signed preliminary agreement, I stood at the center's windows watching students work late into the night. Howard's message waited on my phone. I should have known you'd find each other. Two chess players who saw Marcus as the pawn he always was. My reply was simple. Some men never learn, but their women do. Amanda Chen's face appeared on my screen. Just saw the merger terms. Marcus is going to lose his mind when he realizes what's happening. That's not all he's going to lose. I forwarded her the complete strategy. His new fiancée isn't just refusing to step back from her career. She's about to help us revolutionize medical technology. Every investor he's courted will want in on this venture. And the engagement? Will end very publicly when Emma announces our partnership instead of their wedding date, in front of every business contact he has left. The quantum lab hummed with energy behind me. Young researchers pushing boundaries Marcus had never imagined could be moved. My phone buzzed with messages from other Phoenix Initiative partners, women who'd transformed their own underestimation into fuel for revolution. You know what the best part is? I told Amanda. Marcus still thinks he's the one in control, just like he did with me, just like he did with Victoria. He never learns that the women he tries to diminish are actually studying his weaknesses, planning his obsolescence. The sun set over Harvard Yard, painting the sky in shades of possibility. Soon, Marcus would realize that his attempt to add another trophy to his collection had instead created an alliance capable of transforming multiple industries, that the women he saw as decorative were actually architects of the future. And this time, I wouldn't just be watching his downfall. I'd be partnering with his chosen replacement to build something far greater than revenge. Something that would show every underestimated woman what was possible when brilliant minds refused to be dimmed. The plaza's grand ballroom glittered with New York's financial elite. Marcus had spared no expense for his engagement celebration, not realizing he was actually funding the announcement of his own irrelevance. I watched from a quiet corner as he worked the room, showing off Emma Chen like his latest acquisition, completely unaware that she was about to become his greatest miscalculation. Everything's in place, Sarah whispered, appearing at my elbow with a champagne flute. The press release goes live in 20 minutes. Trading algorithms are ready for the market opening tomorrow. I nodded, observing the room's dynamics. Marcus's remaining business allies clustered in small groups, their forced joviality masking desperate need. They'd all bet heavily on his comeback, on his promised merger with Emma's biotech firm. None of them suspected that the real merger announcement would destroy their last hopes of relevance. Victoria's video link is ready, Amanda Chen reported through my discreet earpiece, broadcasting live from Singapore. She wouldn't miss this for anything. The irony was delicious. Marcus's former secretary, now a tech pioneer, watching his final humiliation from the other side of the world. But something felt off. Marcus was too confident, too relaxed for a man about to lose everything again. "Sarah," I murmured. "Double-check our security protocols. Something's not right." Before she could respond, Howard Sterling appeared beside us, his aged face tight with concern. "We have a problem. Marcus knows." My pulse quickened, but years of corporate warfare had taught me to keep my expression neutral. "How much?" "Enough. One of Emma's board members tipped him off about the merger talks. He's planning to expose her betrayal before she can make the announcement." I caught Emma's eye across the room. She was playing her role perfectly, laughing at Marcus's jokes, touching his arm at just the right moments, but I could see the i.e. tension in her shoulders. "Time to accelerate the timeline," I decided, sending a coded message to our team. The market might be closed, but news cycles never slept. Marcus clinked his glass, calling for attention. Friends, colleagues, distinguished guests. Tonight is about more than just an engagement. "You're right about that," Emma's voice cut through the crowd. She moved to the center of the room with practiced grace, her evening gown catching the light. "Tonight is about the future of innovation." Marcus's smile froze as the ballroom's screens came to life, displaying the Reynolds Global and Innovative Pharmaceuticals logos merging into one. "Emma, darling, what I've been doing all along," she replied, her voice carrying to every corner. "Creating the future while you tried to live in the past." The screens filled with market projections, patent applications, research breakthroughs. Emma's biotech innovations paired with Reynolds Global's quantum computing platform, a combination that would revolutionize medical treatment. "Ladies and gentlemen," I stepped forward, enjoying the shock on Marcus's face. "Welcome to the next evolution of healthcare technology." But Marcus wasn't finished. He pulled out his phone, a desperate smirk playing at his lips. "Interesting." Timing. Almost as interesting as these documents showing corporate espionage. He gestured to his lawyers, who began distributing folders. Evidence that Ms. Reynolds and Ms. Chen conspired to steal proprietary information. The room hushed. I opened the folder, already knowing what I'd find. Doctored emails, fabricated meetings, a carefully constructed narrative of corporate theft. For a moment, I admired his thoroughness. He'd learned something from his previous defeats. "Impressive," I said into the silence, "but predictable." I nodded to Sarah, who activated her tablet. The screens shifted again, now showing a different set of documents. "What you're seeing," I announced, "is evidence of a coordinated attempt to defraud investors. Every fake email, every fabricated document, traced back to their source. The SEC has already been notified." Marcus lunged for the nearest screen, but froze as Victoria's face appeared, broadcasting live from Singapore. "Hello, Marcus. Remember when you taught me how to falsify corporate records? I kept detailed notes." The room erupted in chaos. Marcus's allies tried to distance themselves, his lawyers huddled in panic, and reporters who'd come expecting a society engagement scrambled to cover the biggest business story of the year. "You see," I addressed Marcus directly, "while you were planning to expose Emma's betrayal, we were documenting your attempt at securities fraud. The same arrogance that made you underestimate me, that made you think Emma would be content as your trophy wife, has now given us everything we need." Emma moved to stand beside me, engagement ring already removed. "The merger proceeds as planned, but with an interesting addition. Reynolds Global isn't just acquiring my company's innovations. We're absorbing every company foolish enough to back your fraudulent scheme." Howard Sterling stepped forward, his presence silencing the room. The Sterling name once stood for innovation, for looking to the future. Today, it returns to that legacy, not through my son, but through the women he tried to diminish. Marcus staggered, the full impact of his destruction finally hitting home. Every carefully laid plan, every desperate attempt at resurrection, had just become evidence of his crimes. "Your father warned you," I said softly. "Power isn't about control. It's about vision. While you were clinging to old hierarchies, we were building the future." The evening ended with Marcus in custody, his remaining allies facing SEC investigations, and the business world witnessing the birth of the largest medical technology merger in history. But the real victory wasn't in his destruction. It was in the message sent to every woman who'd ever been told to step back, to play small, to accept less than she was worth. As reporters clamored for statements, I caught Emma's eye. She nodded slightly, understanding passing between us. We hadn't just outmaneuvered Marcus. We'd created a template for revolution, one that would inspire countless others to transform their own underestimation into unstoppable force. The morning after Marcus's downfall dawned clear and bright over Manhattan. I stood in my office at Reynolds Global, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of possibility, while financial networks buzzed with the aftermath of last night's events. The merger announcement had sent our stocks soaring in Asian markets, and European exchanges were following suit. "The SEC just released their preliminary findings," Sarah reported, entering with her morning briefing. "Marcus's fraud attempt was more extensive than we thought. He'd been building this trap for months, thinking he could discredit both you and Emma in one stroke." "How many companies are implicated?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. We'd been tracking his desperate alliance building for weeks. 17. All led by men from his old circle, all facing serious investigations now. She smiled, sharp and satisfied. "The Phoenix Initiative's acquisition team is already approaching their boards with offers." My phone lit up with a message from Amanda. "Chen, Singapore exchange opening now. Our stock's up 42% already. Victoria's running the press conference here." I switched on the video wall, watching Victoria, my husband's former secretary, now our Asia-Pacific Innovation Director, command a room full of international media. Gone was the insecure young woman who'd thought sleeping with the boss was her path to success. In her place stood a confident executive, announcing breakthrough after breakthrough that our merged technologies would soon deliver. "Ms. Reynolds," James appeared in the doorway. "Howard Sterling is here, and you'll want to see this." Howard entered slowly, his age showing more than usual, carrying a leather portfolio I recognized from my early days at Sterling Enterprises. "It's time you had this," he said without preamble, placing it on my desk. Inside were documents I'd never seen, patent applications from 20 years ago, innovations that Sterling Enterprises had buried because they came from female researchers, business plans rejected because they were too aggressive, a systematic pattern of suppressing women's contributions that went back decades. "Marcus didn't invent this pattern," Howard said heavily. "He learned it. From me, from his grandfather, from a corporate culture that saw women as decorative rather than innovative. But you," he smiled, genuine pride shining through, "you didn't just break the pattern, you shattered it completely." Emma Chen arrived as we were reviewing the documents, her presence energizing the room. "The biotech sector's going crazy over our merged capabilities. Every major research institution wants to partner with us now." "And Marcus?" I asked, though his fate was already sealed. "His lawyers are trying to negotiate a plea deal," Sarah reported. "But with the evidence Victoria preserved, plus what we uncovered about the fraud attempt, he's facing serious time." I moved to the windows again, watching the city buzz with morning energy. Below, a news crew was setting up for a live broadcast about the merger. The headlines scrolling across their van called it the dawn of a new corporate era. "You know what Marcus never understood?" I turned back to the room. It wasn't just about the companies, the innovations, the market share. It was about breaking a cycle that trapped brilliant minds in gilded cages. Emma nodded, understanding perfectly. He thought he was finding another trophy wife. Instead, he accidentally connected the two people capable of transforming entire industries. 3. Victoria's voice came through the video link. Don't forget who documented all his mistakes. Howard picked up one of the old patent applications, an early version of the quantum security system we'd perfected. The woman who designed this. Marcus had her transferred to event planning when she wouldn't let him take credit for her work. Find her, I told Sarah. Find all of them. The Phoenix Initiative isn't just about acquiring undervalued companies. It's about reclaiming stolen innovation. The morning unfolded in a blur of activity. Market analysts struggled to calculate the full impact of our merged technologies. Medical researchers began applying for access to our combined platforms. And through it all, a steady stream of messages arrived from women in tech, in finance, in every industry where being underestimated had become fuel for revolution. The Women's Innovation Center at Harvard wants to create a case study, James Ox reported. They're calling it the Reynolds Revolution, how corporate transformation transcends revenge. I thought about that as I prepared for the afternoon's press conference. This had started as a story of personal vindication, a trophy wife turning the tables on her controlling husband. But somewhere along the way, it had evolved into something far more powerful, a template for systemic change. One last thing, Sarah said as we headed to the conference room. Marcus sent this from custody. She handed me a letter, his familiar handwriting now shaky and uncertain. I read it quickly, then dropped it in the shredder without responding. His attempts at manipulation, his promises to make things right, his pleas for mercy, they were irrelevant now. We had moved so far beyond his small vision of power that engaging with him would feel like stepping back in time. The conference room was packed with international media, all eager to understand how a simple corporate takeover had turned into a revolution in medical technology. But as I took my place at the podium, Emma and Victoria's faces on screens beside me, I knew this was more than just another business story. This was about every woman who'd ever been told to dim her light, to play small, to accept less than she was worth. Marcus's destruction wasn't the end of our story. It was just the beginning of something far more powerful. A movement that would ensure no brilliant mind would ever again be underestimated, no innovation buried, no potential contained. We hadn't just changed the game, we'd rewritten the rules entirely. 1 month after Marcus's arrest, I stood in the empty penthouse that had once been our marital home. The space echoed with absence. Artwork removed, furniture gone, every trace of my former life as Mrs. Sterling erased. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawled beneath a canvas of stars, a testament to endless possibility. The real estate agent says we have 3 offers already, Sarah mentioned, her heels clicking on the marble floors. All well above asking price. The Reynolds Global connection makes it quite attractive. I ran my hand along a bare wall where our wedding portrait had once hung. Any word from the legal team? Marcus's plea deal is finalized. 8 years plus restitution. She paused, checking her tablet. The interesting part? Most of his former allies are turning state's evidence. The fraud investigation has uncovered decades of corporate malfeasance. A message lit up my phone. Amanda Chen with updates from our quantum medical division. The first trials of Emma's eye cancer treatment protocols, powered by our computing platform, were showing unprecedented success rates. We'd done more for medical advancement in 1 month than Sterling Enterprises had achieved in its entire history. The Women's Innovation Center called, Sarah continued. They've identified 3 more scientists from the old Sterling archives, brilliant women whose work was buried. One of them is already working with our quantum team. I moved to the kitchen, remembering countless dinner parties where I'd played the perfect hostess while Marcus held court with his business associates. How many deals had been made over those meals? How many women's careers quietly suffocated? Victoria's implementation of the Asian market strategy is exceeding projections, Sarah added. She's become quite the corporate warrior. She always was, I replied, thinking of the young secretary who'd thought power could only be borrowed from men. She just needed to realize it. The elevator chimed, announcing Emma's arrival. She carried architectural plans for the new Reynolds Chen Medical Research Center. The contractors say we can break ground next month. Every major research university wants to partner with us. We spread the plans across the kitchen island where I'd once arranged flowers for Marcus's social gatherings. The facility would be revolutionary. Quantum computing labs merged with medical research spaces, designed to foster collaboration and innovation. Have you seen the latest employment statistics? Emma asked, pulling up data on her tablet. Companies with female leadership have increased 40% since the Phoenix Initiative launched. We're not just changing corporate culture, we're reshaping the entire business landscape. A text from Howard Sterling appeared. The old board members send their regards from the SEC inquiry. Funny how quickly loyalty crumbles when faced with federal charges. The sun had fully set now, the city below coming alive with lights. Each window in every skyscraper represented possibility. Ambitious women working late, planning their own. Revolutions, refusing to be contained. Ms. Reynolds, James appeared in the doorway. The moving team is ready for the last items. I nodded, taking a final walk through the space that had once been my gilded cage. The master bedroom where I'd planned my corporate takeover while Marcus thought I was redecorating. The study where I'd built shell companies and gathered allies. The dining room where I'd listened to countless men dismiss women's potential while serving them perfectly paired wines. You know what Marcus never understood? I said to Sarah and Emma as we rode the elevator down. Power isn't something you can contain. The harder you try to suppress it, the more explosive its eventual release. In the lobby, a young woman was working late at the security desk. She straightened as we passed, her expression bright with recognition. Ms. Reynolds, I just wanted to say. Your story, what you've built. It inspired me to go back to engineering school. I stopped, truly looking at her. In her eyes, I saw the same fire that had driven me, that had fueled Victoria's transformation, that had led Emma to turn Marcus's proposal into an opportunity for revolution. What's your focus? I asked. Quantum engineering, she replied without hesitation. I want to help build what comes next. I exchanged glances with Emma, who was already pulling up her phone. Send your resume to my office, she told the young woman. The new research center will need minds like yours. Outside, Manhattan hummed with energy. My driver held the door to a car that wasn't chosen to match Marcus's taste. Everything in my life now was selected by my own preferences, aligned with my own vision. The foundation received another 100 applications today, Sarah reported as we drove through the glittering streets. Women in tech, in finance, in every industry where talent has been overlooked. Fund them all, I decided. Every woman who's been told to dim her light needs to know there's another way. My phone buzzed with news alerts. Marcus's former CFO pleading guilty to fraud charges. Another Sterling Allies company facing federal investigation. The old power structure crumbling while something new and vibrant rose from its ashes. We passed the Reynolds Global Tower, its innovative architecture a stark contrast to the traditional corporate buildings around it. Like everything else we'd built, it pointed toward the future rather than clinging to the past. You know what this moment really is? I mused, watching the city scroll past. It's liberation. Not just from Marcus, not just from the old Sterling Empire, but from every structure designed to contain women's potential. Emma smiled, understanding perfectly. They thought they were caging us. Instead, they were giving us time to learn their weaknesses, to plan their obsolescence, to prepare for revolution. As we drove into the future we'd created, I thought of every woman who'd ever been told to be less, to want less, to accept less. Marcus's destruction wasn't just a personal victory. It was a beacon, showing others what was possible when brilliant minds refused to be diminished. The night stretched ahead, full of possibility. We weren't just free from the past. We were free to reshape the future entirely. The United Nations General Assembly fell silent as I concluded my address on technology and gender equality. The standing ovation that followed wasn't just for me. It was for every woman who'd ever been underestimated, every brilliant mind that had refused to be contained. From my position at the podium, I could see delegates frantically taking notes, already planning how to implement Phoenix Initiative programs in their own countries. "The questions are pouring in," Sarah whispered as we moved to the private conference room for the follow-up session. "Every major nation wants to know how to replicate our success." Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the UN building, New York sparkled with morning light. Somewhere in that urban maze, Marcus sat in his federal cell, probably still wondering how his perfect plan had backfired so spectacularly. "The latest numbers are in," Emma announced, joining us with her tablet displaying market data. "Reynolds Chen Medical's breakthrough has doubled our market cap overnight. We're now the largest tech medical corporation in history." But it wasn't just about corporate success anymore. The Phoenix Initiative had evolved into something far more powerful, a global movement for recognizing and unleashing suppressed talent. Every week brought new stories, brilliant researchers emerging from obscurity, innovative leaders breaking free from traditional constraints, revolutionary ideas finally finding light. Victoria's launching the Asia-Pacific expansion today, Amanda reported via video link. 10 new research centers across the region, everyone led by women who were previously overlooked for leadership roles. I moved to the window, watching the city pulse with possibility. "How many applications for the next round of foundation grants?" "Over 10,000, Sarah replied. "From 93 countries. Every one of them has a story similar to ours. Brilliant minds held back by outdated thinking." The door opened to admit Howard Sterling, looking energized despite his age. "The SEC investigation just revealed something interesting. Those patents Marcus buried? They weren't just from Sterling Enterprises. He had a network, sharing information about difficult women across multiple companies." "Had is the operative word," Emma noted with satisfaction. "Every company in his old network is either under investigation or being transformed by new leadership." My phone buzzed with a message from the warden of Marcus's federal facility. He was requesting a meeting, again. Like all his previous attempts at contact, this one would go unanswered. We had moved so far beyond his small vision of power that engaging with him would feel like stepping backward in time. The Women's Innovation Center is expanding, Sarah reported, scrolling through updates. Harvard's model is being replicated at universities worldwide. They're calling it the Reynolds effect, the systematic identification and empowerment of overlooked talent. A young UN aide entered with urgent news. The General Assembly had just passed a resolution supporting the Phoenix Initiative's global expansion. Countries were pledging billions to identify and support innovative women in their own territories. "It's not just about business anymore," I observed, watching delegates celebrate below. "We're changing the fundamental way power operates." Emma smiled, understanding perfectly. Marcus thought he was just controlling his wife. He never realized he was creating the template for his entire system's destruction. My tablet lit up with a live feed from Singapore, Victoria conducting a masterclass for aspiring tech leaders. The former secretary who'd thought sleeping with the boss was her only path to power was now showing others how to build their own strength. "Ms. Reynolds," James appeared with more updates. "The quantum medical trials have exceeded all projections. The treatment protocols are being fast-tracked for approval." I thought about all the lives that would be saved by innovations that might never have seen light under the old system. Marcus hadn't just tried to suppress me. He'd almost buried breakthroughs that could transform human health. The Foundation received an interesting application, Sarah mentioned, pulling up a file. Marcus's niece, brilliant quantum physicist, but her family insisted she focus on suitable pursuits for a sterling woman. Approve it, I said immediately. Let's show her there's another path. The day continued in a whirlwind of meetings, each one expanding the scope of our influence. The Reynolds-Chen merger had created more than a corporate giant. It had sparked a revolution in how talent was recognized and developed. Howard lingered after the final session, watching the sunset paint Manhattan in shades of possibility. You know what the real victory is? He mused. Not destroying the old system, but building something so much better that going back becomes unthinkable. A message arrived from the tech prodigy we'd discovered working security in my old building. She'd just patented her first quantum innovation. Another piece of the future we were building, another mind freed to reach its full potential. The old Sterling Enterprises board is meeting today, Sarah noted with irony. Trying to figure out how to survive in the world we've created. Most of them are facing shareholder revolts demanding female leadership. I smiled, remembering all the board meetings where I'd been treated as decorative rather than substantive. Send them our latest market projections. Let them see exactly what they missed by underestimating women's potential. As night fell over New York, I reviewed plans for the next phase of our expansion. The Reynolds Global Tower glowed in the distance, its innovative design a stark contrast to the traditional corporate structures around it. Like everything we'd built, it pointed toward the future rather than clinging to the past. You know what? Marcus never understood, I said to Emma as we prepared to leave. True power isn't about control. It's about catalyzing potential. Every woman he tried to diminish became part of something far greater than he could imagine. The city sparkled. Below, full of brilliant minds waiting to be unleashed. We hadn't just broken free from one man's constraints. We'd created a movement that would ensure no talent would ever again be suppressed by outdated thinking. The emergency board meeting was called at midnight. From the Reynolds Global Command Center, I watched multiple screens as a coordinated cyber attack threatened everything we'd built. Someone had launched a sophisticated attempt to breach our quantum security systems, targeting not just our corporate infrastructure, but the medical research that could save millions of lives. They're hitting us from multiple points, Amanda reported from Singapore, her face grim on the main screen. The pattern suggests insider knowledge. Sarah burst in, tablet in hand. We traced the breach. It's coming from inside Marcus's federal facility, and he's not working alone. His uncle Richard Sterling is funding the attack. They've activated trading algorithms, betting against our stock for when markets open. I moved to the central console, watching data flow across screens. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same men who'd dismissed women's technical capabilities were now trying to use technology to bring us down. But they'd forgotten one crucial detail. This was our domain now. Victoria, I called to another. Screen. Implementation status? Our former secretary, now Chief of Asia-Pacific Operations, smiled wolfishly. Honeypot servers activated. They're hitting exactly where we wanted them to. While Marcus and his allies thought they were breaching our defenses, they were actually following a path we'd laid out for them. Each attempted intrusion revealed more of their network, their resources, their desperation. Initiate Protocol Phoenix, I commanded. Across our global network, hidden defenses activated. Each attempted breach was not just blocked, but reversed, sending cascading failures back through the attacker's systems. Their own technology turned against them, a mirror of how we'd transformed their outdated power structures. By dawn, the attack had done more than fail. It had exposed decades of corporate conspiracy. Richard Sterling's entire network collapsed, their accounts frozen by the SEC. Marcus's final attempt at revenge had only sealed his conspirators' fate. 1 year later, I stood on the stage of the newly completed Reynolds Innovation Campus. The sprawling complex, with its architecture resembling phoenix wings, hosted the inaugural Global Women in Technology Summit. 5,000 attendees filled the auditorium, brilliant minds who had once been overlooked, now leading the future of innovation. The numbers are extraordinary, Sarah reported. Reynolds Global's market value has tripled. The quantum medical division has revolutionized cancer treatment. The Phoenix Initiative has launched more female-led companies than any program in history. Through the vast windows, I could see the Manhattan skyline where this journey had begun. The old Sterling building was now dwarfed by our new headquarters, a physical representation of how far we'd come from the days when I played the role of trophy wife. Breaking news, Emma appeared. Richard Sterling just pleaded guilty. The SEC investigation uncovered a 50-year pattern of suppressing women's innovations across multiple industries. Victoria's face appeared on the main screen. Our quantum security protocol has been adopted as the global standard. The same technology they tried to steal is now protecting digital networks worldwide. Looking out at the audience, scientists, executives, innovators who had refused to let their light be dimmed, I thought about the true meaning of transformation. Among them sat Marcus's niece, the quantum physicist whose family had tried to limit her potential. She now led our advanced research division. 10 years ago, I addressed the crowd, a man tried to contain his wife's ambitions, thinking he was protecting his power. What he actually did was create the catalyst for revolution, not just in one company, but in how power itself operates. The screens behind me filled with images. Breakthrough medical treatments, saving lives worldwide. Thousands of companies launched through the Phoenix Initiative. Brilliant minds emerging from the shadows of suppression to lead innovation globally. Howard, Sterling watched from the front row, tears in his aged eyes. He had lived to see his family's company become something far greater than its founders had imagined. Not through the son who had tried to maintain control, but through the women who had refused to be controlled. Marcus's prison sentence had ended last month, but his release barely made the news. The system he'd tried to protect was so thoroughly transformed that he emerged into a world where his old power structures were museum pieces. My phone lit up with one final message from him. Like all his previous attempts at contact, it would go unread. We had moved so far beyond his small vision of control that engaging with him would be like trying to explain space travel to someone who believed the world was flat. As evening fell over the campus, I met with young innovators at the start of their journeys. They didn't want to hear about corporate takeovers or revenge. They wanted to know about transformation, about turning underestimation into unstoppable force. You know what the real legacy is? I told my assembled team as we watched the sunset. Not the companies we've built or the technologies we've created. It's the understanding that power doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from unleashing potential. The night stretched ahead, limitless with possibility. We hadn't just changed who held power, we had changed what power meant, and that was a transformation that could never be undone.